everybody. Happy spring. We have reached green season. I didn't realize when I got dressed this morning that I was going to be kind of coordinating. The sweater of the day clashes terribly, so I'll have to stop and move that in. I just want to say hi to everyone who reached out on the podcast last time, either in the comments or on Instagram or Ravelry. I'm going to tell you who you are. Judi from Canada, Pam Bailey, Christine Beaudoin, Pat Kohler, Ericka Rackliffe, Angela and Kelly. Hi, I know both of you personally. Evelyn, Burt Jones, my sound guy, which we're going to talk about. Beverly, Fauth, Bareiria, Linda Gesling, Marilyn, Wallace, Diane, Scott, Peggy, Svee. She's reached out a number of times to me, so I'm getting to know Peggy. Little.kitten, Knitting with Quills, Walter W., Edina Cole. Edina, I'm interested to know if you are from Minnesota, because we have a suburb called Edina. Sue, Cori, Carolyn Jantz, Oliviamanke, krismarie, Lisa, Luff 68 on Ravelry, Gail Shafley, I bet that's how you say it. I didn't write it very well. Jane Taylor in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, my hometown. Hi, Jane, librarian. Terry Sheehan and Sharon Hoyt. So those are just most of the people who reached out to me. I try to really do a good job of keeping track on a sheet of paper so that I can just say hi, because I really appreciate it when you take the time. I watch a lot of podcasts, especially on my television in the evening, and I don't always go over and give it a thumbs up or subscribe or, tell someone that they did a nice job. And so I need to be really thankful to all of you who take the time to do that for me, who reach out and make a comment or tell me something. I just really appreciate it. So let's touch on the sound. I have a new microphone. And so many of you reached out after the last podcast and said, your sound was fine. I do realize now it was. However, when I recorded the first 16 minutes of the podcast and then decided to check the sound, the little audio bars at the bottom of the page were just off the charts. And so I was really fearful that anyone who had headphones on would maybe be like, in that first couple of minutes. And so I re-recorded all of that information, and it was still quite loud. And that's when I moved the microphone to the table. And I'm used to projecting. I taught at-risk students for 17 years. So I could hear a pin drop in the back of the classroom and I could get my voice to reach there no matter what. So I'm going to work on just lowering my volume as I sit in here, because my recording is quite a distance away. But I am able to edit it when I do the editing of the podcast, and I turned it down, but it took me a long time to turn it down from 100% to 68% in all the sections. And that's why it was better, but I had never done that before. And I just didn't want anyone to have their TV turned up real high and then, get blown out of the water, scare a baby, whatever, which I've been known to do with my voice anyway. So I just wanted to thank everyone for reaching out and telling me that the sound was fine. And Bert, who is half of the Super Chunky Audio podcast, lives here in Minnesota, and he reached out to me after I talked to him on the Shop Pop, and we did some editing information and some microphone information. So we placed it over to the side of my neck a little bit, and I'm just going to try to tone it down just a notch to get it to a place where I don't have to spend so much time on the audio editing. I may eventually upgrade to a different program which would do some of that for me, but for right now I'm just not going to invest in the time nor the energy. I've finally got iMovie figured out. So anyway, thanks to everyone for that. I am going to mention right here that someone reached out in a comment, and I wish I could remember who it was, because I'd say, and asked me if I was ever going to put a donate button on my podcast. I don't plan to. I don't really want to go the route of Patreon or a donate button. But if you feel like you would like to just say, I like your podcast, buy a pattern. I have 25 or 30 patterns out there. And so that would be just a really nice way to support the podcast. If you can afford $6 or $7, and want to just buy a pattern, and that way you get something out of it too, and I get a little support. So thank you to whoever asked me about that. I'm glad I got a chance to kind of touch base about that, because I think a lot of podcasts are going that route. I also had someone reach out in the Ravelry thread and ask me about the book, Minnesota 52. And I think my podcast is reaching more people, and so people are going back and watching from the beginning. And so I talked a lot more about the book at the beginning of this podcast when I did most of the sweaters in the book. But you can get the book still at knitcahoots.com. That is the website. Or if you just Google Minnesota 52, it'll pop up. There are only about 20 books left. You can get it as an ebook on Ravelry, and you can get all the patterns for individual download. I will say that the book has 16 patterns and 10 stories, a recipe. So there is some information in the book that you wouldn't get if you just bought a single pattern, because we told stories for every section about friends who traveled together to go to knitting events, and we tried to be clever and funny. Not sure that we pulled that off completely, because what we found funny might not find funny, but anyway. So if you're interested in getting a book, they are still available out there. I have left the Irocknits KAL open for a couple more days. I thought this morning, I should just draw. And then I thought, no, what if someone is frantically trying to finish an Irocknits project and wants to get it in the March-April thread? There are a number of entries now. Last time we only had like 2, but a number of you went out and have knit a cowl or the shawl. So I will wait, and I think I will draw that on like May 1st. And close that thread and open the May thread, and then I'll just announce it on the next podcast. Is it more fun to hear about that you win on the podcast than just having someone send you a message in Ravelry and say, hey, you won the $25 gift card? I don't know. Yeah, I think it's kind of fun to hear it on the podcast. So I think I'll hold it out until then, and then, you know, if I don't hear in a couple days, then I just PM the person, and that's fine. I do have the giveaway of the bags, though. I did draw for that this morning. Remember these wonderful Love Your Melon recycled bags, and giant. It's a really nice size. I've been carrying mine, and I really like the size of it. And I have 2 bags to give away and 1 wallet. So for Ravelry, the bag is going to B.N. Bullock from Tennessee. So get in touch with me and give me your mailing address and your first and last name. I assume that's your initials and your last name. But you're from Tennessee, B.N. Bullock. And then on Instagram for the wallet and the bag, it's Yarn Bethy on Instagram. And I did those by random number generator this morning. I think one was 10 and one was 2. Oh, I can't remember the numbers. But anyway, I just went to both those places and did a little random number generator and counted down and figured out that those are the 2 people who won the bag and the wallet. So Yarn Bethy and B.N. Bullock. Get in touch on Ravelry, or you can just always email me at Cori@irocknits.com if that works for you too, because I get it either way. I have a shout out today. I was looking for some yarn for a project that I want to do. I didn't have enough of all the colors that I needed. It's a brioche cowl, and I bought a bunch of the wrong weight of yarn to go with another skein so they didn't match. And I got in touch with this company or this yarn store who had it and said, you know, I'm ordering this, and they reached out to me and said, you know, we don't have it anymore. We don't have a skein of that left on our shelves. We have these 3 other skeins. If you would like one of those, just let us know. Otherwise, we'll refund your money. And I said, I need that particular color because I'm matching it up with another color. I can see it right here. I have you propped up on a bin. I can see the color. It's a Mountain Colors, which is a kind of a variegated with a little barber pole in it. And they got back to me and told me other stores that had that colorway. So Yarn and Threads in Lake Linden, Michigan, you rock, right? She got back to me and said, hey, you know, this place and this place might have it because they know that they carried Mountain Colors. I thought that was great. So I went over to the other store. But who does that, right? Takes the time, and maybe they know one another. I don't think they were both in Michigan, though. Anyway, I thought that was cool. Shout out to Yarn and Threads. Good for them. Okay, I have a little story. I have several stories today, so I'm going to plop them in several places. They're all quite short, so although we know I'm an embellisher. Right? So, my daughter was home. It was my birthday weekend a weekend ago. Oh, there's a story for you. Okay, I'm going to tell a little tale on myself. I didn't know how old I was. Is that, okay, somebody out there is going to tell me that that has happened to them before, right? That you turn the next year older and you processed, you've been saying 26 for a year, and then you go, oh, wait, I'm a year older now. I'm 27. Oh, wait, right? So my husband turns a year older 6 months in front of me, and we're old. 1960 and 1961. Doesn't that sound old? And so I always know that he turns a year older 6 months before me. And this year, for some reason, he's 1960 and it's 2019, my birthday. So I did the math and thought, oh, I'm 59. And he turned in November, which is 2018. I turned in 2019, which means we're 58. And it took me a second to figure that out. And then it dawned on me that I think I've been saying 59 all year. Like in my head. Oh, you're 59. Oh, you're 59. No, haven't even done 58 yet. Okay. Sometimes you just wonder, right? What your brain is thinking about. That's not what you should be thinking about, right? You're just not in the moment. You're not paying close attention. That happens on knitting patterns too, right? Okay, so my original story. My daughter Kylie was home for Easter, and she has a sweetheart here in Minneapolis, and so they try to see each other every couple of weeks. And we were celebrating on Friday. We were going out to dinner, and they said yes, they would go with us. And then on Saturday, we were taking my mom, who has, most of you know, had a pretty significant back surgery in November, like major back surgery. They built her a platform for her spine, and they went in through the front and the back, right? Like big time surgery. So she's still recovering quite a bit with walking, like working up her, stamina. So we were going to take her to the mall here in Eden Prairie, where they have a Von Maur, and to the Nordstroms at the Mall of America, because she has 3 weddings this summer. And at 2 of the weddings, she's the grandma of the groom. So she'll have to have her picture taken, right? So she'll need nice dresses, and that's going to be tough, right? If you're fully capable and physically not challenged, trying on clothes is a lot, right? Going back, trying on, getting different sizes. So we really wanted to go to kind of the high service department stores where we could get help with that. And then, and we did. She found 4 dresses. She's got showers to go to and things like that. She's going to take them home and talk to my dad, whatever. That was great. But we were shopping and resting, and we came out of Von Maur, and we're on the 2nd floor, and we were going to get a soda so we could sit at a little table and rest for a bit. Mom wanted to take us to the eyeglass place because she'd picked out new eyeglasses and she wants to see them before we leave the mall. But we've been there for quite a while. So we go to the pretzel place, and there was no one in the vicinity of the pretzel place, and so we kind of stood behind the cash register for a minute, and then a few minutes later, a girl came out of the back kitchen area, young lady, and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you know, I'm all alone today." She was doing pretzels in the back. We could kind of hear that something was going on. And she said, "I had to take a break for about a half an hour. I had to close the store. I'm here by myself." And I said, "Wow, are you always here by yourself? Because this is a fairly busy mall." I mean, not all the malls are that, you know, busy anymore, but it's a fairly busy mall. And she said, "Yes, I am always here by myself. And some people were being really rude to me. And I was getting frustrated because she couldn't keep up, right? She's there all by herself and she had a line. And so people were rude to her. And I said, "Oh, that's too bad. I hate that you're here by yourself. Do you ever have crossover?" And she says, "No, I'm here from 8:30 in the morning until 9:30 at night." Are you kidding me? By yourself? And then people were rude? Wow, we got to do better, right? We got to be kinder, gentler. You never ever know what's going on in someone's life or what they're doing that might cause them to run behind or be late or maybe not be as customer friendly as they maybe should be in the moment. We went and sat down and we just talked about it for a few minutes. I just thought, I used to teach high school and we'd start, be at school before 7 in the morning. And then I coached cheerleaders, a whole nother story, for a number of years. And we would practice at night. We'd have games. So I'd go at 7 in the morning till 10 at night, but not every day. Right? And not for what I'm assuming is minimum wage. God, I just kind of want to go back in there and I can't even eat pretzels. Buy a pretzel every day and just like cheer her up. Just kind of say, "I'm so impressed that you work this much, that you work this hard and at a pretzel place in the mall." Yeah. Cori's story's number 1. Just remember that, girl. Right? Okay. Let me show you a tip or trick. I've got a good one today. I read the Mason-Dixon blog, and I know a lot of you do and you subscribe. It comes out every weekend. And Patty Lyons, who is doing the Roselle Tea knit along right now, that I'm participating in because some of my library knitters are knitting along with Patty. And so I decided that it would be good for me to see the information that they were also looking at in the pattern. It's a video tutorial pattern, so you can join at any time and start it. And then Patty teaches it almost like a masterclass where she's giving tons of information throughout the whole pattern that you can go watch the videos for. So it's been very interesting, but I think Patty Lyons is a genius around knitting. She is all about the why. Why does that happen? Why are you doing it that way? And she got asked a question this week that I think is a something that you all would want to print out. Okay, so it's about combining yarns so that you can get a different gauge on an item. So like putting 2 fingering weights together, right? And Patty said you're looking for a formula, but I don't think that there's a formula. But here's a kind of a rough idea of what you can get. Broad strokes, she called it. It's in this post, Ask Patty Custom Yarn. And down here, and going on to the next page, it says, 2 lace equals fingering to sport. 2 fingering equals sport to DK. 2 sport equals light worsted. 2 DK equals heavy to light worsted to heavy worsted. 2 worsted equals chunky to bulky. 2 chunky equals 1 super bulky. When I first started knitting, that little list would have been so helpful to me to have in a little knitting notebook, because then I wouldn't have had to, try to look it up every time. And she also did a little tutorial and I've done this before too. You take 2 pieces of the yarn that you're using and you put it through the needle gauge hole, and wherever it goes through easily, that's the size of needle that you should start knitting with to do gauge. So here's an example. This is doubled yarn going through a needle gauge, and then the needle size is right there. So on this one, 2 strands are going through that hole easily, but they kind of fill it up. And so you would start knitting with a size 3, 3.25. And that would give you the closest you could start for gauge. So if you've lost a ball band and you don't know if it's a DK weight or a worsted weight, I have a little notebook that I keep stuff like this in, and I have a picture like this, but not this many pictures. This just came out, and if you put 2 strands through a hole, it will tell you what needle size you can start swatching with. That'll be closest to getting like a average gauge. Really nice resource to have. Yeah. Patty put it all in one place at our fingertips, which is really nice, because I have a little recipe card with that written out on it, taped in a notebook from who knows. Now I kind of know it, right? The problem with having a formula for all of them is that we know, and we've discussed before, that there's light fingering and heavy fingering. So if you put 2 light fingering together, you're not going to get the same thing as if you put 2 heavy fingering together. I was just helping a friend with that this weekend. She wants to make socks, and she likes that when the socks are a little thicker, instead of the really skinny fingering. And so I told her, then you're always going to want to look for a 380 to 400 yard skein of yarn. And most indie dyers now have 463 in 100 grams. So it's super skinny. And if you don't want that, then don't continue to buy 463 yardage, because you get more, you get 63 more yards. Why isn't that a good deal? It's a lot more knitting, right? You can knit 63 more yards worth of stitches. What am I wearing today? I'm wearing my Atta Girl. This is my Atta Girl sweater from last summer. 2 skeins of yarn held together to make a marled effect, although you don't have to marl it. You could use 2 of the same color. It's a kind of a chunky weight. It works up super quickly on big needles, and this is the cropped version. So it's hits me at the high hip, covers my waist, but you could certainly make it shorter if you were really looking for that cropped look that seems to be going around on Instagram right now, where people are wearing it with tunics and dresses and long shirts hanging out underneath, and the cropped sweater is there because it's a lot less knitting, a lot less yarn, so it's a little more affordable. I knit mine in Leading Men Fiber Arts DK. It's one of my favorite DK bases. I will say that this sweater is a little heavy, but it's all lace, yarn over knit together. It's not really, that's lace, but super easy. So it's very open, so I don't ever feel hot in it because there's lots of air. It's short sleeved. You just do a little bit of, when you divide, it's a top down raglan. The sleeves are stockinette. This is yarn over knit 2 together. It's a pretty quick knit. I would think you could also just do the whole in stockinette and just follow the numbers and not worry about the yarn over knit 2 together if you wanted to do it that way too. So Atta Girl, ATTAGIRL. There's a whole story on the project page about that. I have another tip or trick for you today. This one I found in a notebook that I was holding for my library knitters to talk to them about. And it's called Mind the Gap, or Minding the Gap by Bluebee Studios. And she has a really nice website with a blog. This is a blog post. And she's talking about the gap that happens when you join in the round. And I don't teach this technique, and I don't use this technique much. I don't know what that says about me, but it's a good one. So she's got pictures of what happens here. But basically, when you're joining in the round and you go to use the first stitch on the needle to join that in the round, you get a little divot between the first stitch of the round and the last stitch of the round. And then I take my tail and I make up that stitch by using a tapestry needle and sticking it through and making the stitch conform to the rest of the stitches on that cast on row. So it physically, I can look at it and I can follow the stitch pattern and make that happen. But if you are bothered by that little divot and you don't know how to make the little loop to make it look like the stitch pattern, this is a really simple way to do it better. You cast on an extra stitch and then decrease it away on the first round, basically. That's how it goes, okay? So you slip the first stitch purlwise with the working yarn and back, place a marker for the beginning of the round, then work as directed all the way around. And when you get around to those last 2 stitches, you can knit or purl them together depending on what stitch you're working in. So if you're working in stockinette, you would knit them together. If the last stitch on your needle was ribbing, then you could purl those 2 stitches together. You can also slip one over and pass the slip stitch over. That works as well. But it is a really quick and easy, down and dirty way to fix that gap. And so if you want to go check out Blue Bee Studio and the Minding the Gap from December 8th of 2018, she has a picture tutorial on how to do it. But I think you all you're all good enough knitters to understand what I'm talking about. But that was in my folder to talk to the my knitters at the library about, and I had never shared it on the podcast. So I thought, well, I will do that now. Should we move on to the shawl of the day? Because we've got all the green going on here. This is Charlotte's Web. This is partially a beautiful shawl and partially a hot mess. And I'll tell you why. Let me show you the pattern here. It's the Charlotte's Web shawl. There's some pictures of it, see? And it is by May Landra, and it came out in January of 2006. So I knit it quite a while ago. But you know, when we talk about these vintage patterns, they never go old. They're really fun knit, easy to knit. Patterns that were easy in 2006 will still be easy in 2019, right? So we're just going to keep looking at it. It is a triangular shawl. Here you go. This one has fringe, mine does not. This one has a edging, mine does not. The original had fringe. I don't know why I chose not to do the fringe, and I knit mine in Koigu Painter's Palette. That KPPPM, Koigu Painter's Palette Premium. I think that's what it calls for, KPPPM. And now, knowing what I know now, I would never have used this yarn for this project because I entered it in the state fair years ago, and the comment that I got was, you can't see the lace, which is true. You know, you can't really see the lace. But several of the patterns were done up in like a variegated like this. But why are you going to take the time to knit all that lace work if it's not really going to show up that well, right? Would have been better in a tonal or even a solid. So it's a center spine where you're doing increases, and each of the little the spine has this triangular shape right here that's stockinette, and then you change over into, can you see those little triangles? Yeah, I think you can, right there, and there, and there. So it is a written pattern. It's not charted, I don't think. Maybe it is, let me look. Chart, fringe, lace, stripes, color work, top down. So they did it in sections, so you could stripe it. May began to knit this shawl in a simple lace pattern, interchanging the colorways. The pattern is now legendary among knitters. The shawl uses 5 different variegated colorways, each one eased into the next. You may decide to knit some colorways wider than others, and there are many color choices. And then they list all the color choices of the ones that are out there. Tons of people have knit this. There are, I think, 900 projects, and it's a large shawl. Can I go like this and show you? So see, I'm grabbing at the middle and my arm is completely outstretched, which means it's more than a yard for me, you know, nose to fingertip, that kind of measurement. So it's quite long. Let me see here. Yeah, so it's a big shawl. Fingering weight knit on size 6. You know, that's kind of that standard fingering weight gauge where you use a size 6 needle. 16 inches and 28 rows in 4 inches. It takes about 875 yards, although I think you can bind off at any time. So you could use up all your yarn, could be one of those you just keep going, or you could just bind it off when you ran, when you got to the end of your yarn. You could make your fringe first, and then know how much, yarn you want to use. It was originally in Knits from Painter's Palette. It was in Wrapped in Colors, 30 Shawls to Knit, and it was in Knitting Magazine 144, August of 2015. So it had an update. It has had an update from its original. So there were 3 places out there that you could still get, and they're all listed right here on Ravelry. So you can go to there and you could click on each one of those, and you could check the availability of those books or ebooks or whatever. It is not an individual pattern download, so my guess is you have to get one of the books to get it, which you can check around yarn store, library, online. You can get used copies of everything these days if you just Google it. Google it. It'll usually come up with Amazon first and then eBay second. But you can go to those used places on Amazon, and those are individual booksellers, and figure out who's got the pattern for. So if you're looking for a very repeatable lace pattern, it really does. I can't remember what the repeat was, but I'm going to say it was about this long. Not a very big repeat, over and over and over again. So easy to memorize. And then there are lines here that always line up, and you're not going to see them, but I can see them. But there are lines of stockinette stitches about every 1.5 inches that have to line up as you're knitting, so you can check your knitting as you go. So you don't get off, because you can check in the row to make sure that this stockinette stitch is in a line. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my trip to Wisconsin Craft Market. My daughter and I were visiting the University of Madison, Wisconsin-Madison Law School this week. We were there for about 22 hours. I think we checked in that night at 10 o'clock, and we left the next afternoon. So, but while you're in Wisconsin, on your way through Wisconsin, north to south or east to west, I highly recommend Wisconsin Craft Market. I put a picture on Instagram to show you would not know that this was a hidden gem when you walked into the store. It feels like an old Ben Franklin, or kind of like the front of a Michael's. So puzzles, kids' toys, books, artistry supplies, painting, palettes, all that kind of stuff up front. And then when you get to the back of this store, you literally walk into rows and rows of yarn. That's Cascade 220, all the colors. Every row is yarn. And you might say to yourself, well, Cori, all the Michaels have yarn. No, this is high-end indie dyed yarn. So not only does he carry like the big box store or sock yarns from Germany that are not considered indie dyed because they're all dyed together in big, lots. He also has Malabrigo and shepherd's wool and eco wool. And then he also has 3 Irish girls and Leading Men Fiber Arts. And I can't even list them all. There is so much. They have shopping carts in the store that you can take up and down the aisles. There's an entire aisle that long of just needles on both sides. Needles and notions. It's crazy. It's mind-blowing. I told my knitting group when I saw them on Saturday, it's only about a 4.5-hour drive from the Twin Cities. You could get up in the morning, drive over there, have lunch, shop in the afternoon, and drive back. And that might be something that we need to do. Yeah, it's just really fun to see that much yarn in one place. It just really, it's just fun. So I shopped for about an hour because I chatted with the woman who was working in the Wisconsin craft mart. She remembered me from the January thaw and our group, because when we were in there, we were having a really good time. The first time I went, I was thrilled that you could get a shopping cart, a little shopping cart, but a shopping cart to put your yarn in. And we were just having, there were a big number of us that went over from the January thaw, which is Jeanette of Sun Valley Fibers retreat that happens in January in Madison every year. And you can go to the other yarn stores in town. The Sow's Ear is a darling coffee and yarn store in a little old house. But we all went as a large group, and she said, "You were wearing a yellow sweater." Seriously? I have not gone to the thaw. I didn't go this year. And so the fact that she remembered just told me that I was probably being loud and enthusiastic. Which is a much better word to use to describe me. Passionate. So anyway, I talked to her at length. We were talking about teaching brioche and how we teach brioche stitches, because I'd helped a friend with brioche this week earlier, and I haven't taught a brioche class before, and so I don't remember. I think she asked me what I was knitting on, and I had this brioche cowl on the needles, and then I was looking at yarn because I got a gift certificate for my birthday, and I wanted to see if I could see the colorways in person at their store and then order from somewhere else, which is kind of rude to say to someone that works in the yarn store, right? I want to look at your colors and then I'm going to go buy it somewhere else. But I did. I bought a little yarn. Not a whole lot, but I did buy some yarn while I was there. Leading Men Fiber Arts. And they were here this weekend. So, I don't know. I hadn't seen that colorway before and I wanted it. Darn it. But yeah, so I spent quite a bit of time in there. So by the time I left, it was raining and I had to drive back to the Twin Cities by myself because my daughter had left to go back to Iowa. But anyway, it's just a really fun destination. If you ever get the chance, I would highly recommend it. Wisconsin Craft Market. Okay, I'm going to pause for a minute here and switch out the mannequin. I told you it clashed. I really love this sweater and I want you all to love it too. So squint your eyes and imagine it in your favorite color. Because I had yarn to use up and I just decided that I was going to go for it with this one. This is Driftwood by Isabel Kramer, and it is a free pattern on Ravelry. It was published in 2012. It comes in 5 sizes: 33, 35, 39, 43, and 46. So it doesn't go up and down real far, but it's free. So extra small to extra large, and it is meant to be worn with positive ease. So I knit it in a worsted weight superwash merino that has not been a problem at all. I don't have any hanging, no drape, no like pulling out of shape. It has really held its shape well, and I think that's the combination of the 2 different kinds of yarns I was using at the time. But I printed it out in a solid, which a lot of you are going to love. And then look at what you can do, right? Any kind of striping. You could put 1 stripe across. You could put large stripes across. It doesn't have to look like this one in order for you to knit it. If you really like a Henley, if you like that short vertical line, which kind of draws attention to your face, and not a lot of people want it to wear something that's as boldly horizontally striped as this. Although remember, Amy Herzog says the human eye cannot detect horizontal stripes to make you look wider. I gotta still look that up and see if that's a thing. Someone look that up for me. Go get on your computer right now while I finish podcasting and look up, can the human eye see horizontal stripes that make you look wider? Because we all think that horizontal stripes make us look wider, right? I love stripes. I love stripes. My daughter is not a stripe person, and I'll pick a stripe something out of a clothing rack first thing up. I don't know why my mind is drawn so much to chevrons and stripes. It must be just the way that I see them, that I enjoy stripes. The reason that I love this sweater is because it was one of the first ones that has a set-in sleeve. And I'm going to take this off the mannequin so that you can see it, because it's not a raglan, it's not a yoked sweater, it's a shoulder fitting sweater, which is amazing. Also in that it's free, because that takes some real math skills to make that happen. So let me read you some of the information. Adult, buttonholes, contiguous, Henley neck in the round, long sleeve, one piece, positive ease, scoop neck, seamless, worked flat, well, worked flat and then worked in the round, top down, written pattern. It is available also in Italian, Danish, Spanish, Czech, Portuguese, and Norwegian. Good on you, Isabel Kramer. That's excellent. I like Isabel Kramer's style. I think I've talked about this maybe on the podcast before. She's the one who models her own clothes in the kind of the low slung jeans. She's real trim, real straight up and down. This does not have a picture of her, but you can recognize her patterns because she'll often cut off her head, and there'll be a pair of kind of low slung jeans with her hand in her pocket, and a real kind of sporty, athletic, easy to wear style. So as I said, it came out in June of 2012, and it is 19 stitches to 4 inches. Worsted weight yarn on a US 6 or 7. So if you've got a bunch of worsted Cascade 220 or Shepherd's Harvest in your stash, this would be the perfect sweatshirt for you to knit. Cast it on right now and you'll have it for next fall, right? It'll be perfect. Now, try to pull this off without knocking over my mannequin here. Okay, so firstly, I'm going to show you my buttons. Aren't they cute? The little owls. I do not have a functional Henley anymore. I stitched it shut when I put the buttons on. It wasn't something that I ever thought I was going to open. And it is a long Henley. I really do think you could make it shorter if you chose to. You wouldn't have to have it go down to the center of the sweater. But the part that I was really fascinated with, and I'm going to really try to show you here, is the construction here and here of the shoulder. Isn't that wonderful? It's so nice, right? So you're coming down almost as if you're starting a raglan at the back of your neck. I'm not showing that very well. There you go. And then you split it out at your shoulder. It's a really nice fitting sweater. It really does work well. And I would think that if you are bigger busted, but still have average sized shoulders, that you could just work more increases in the front of this after you've gotten the neck kind of going, to modify it to fit you, because your shoulders don't need to have more stitches cast on. You'd have to take a look at the schematic and the pattern to see how wide that original number is when it gets out to the shoulders. See how wide that is there? I just found it to be a genuinely well-written pattern for a set-in sleeve, and it's free. So I really did enjoy it. I will make it again in another color, and I will stripe it differently as well. Okay, this calls for Lang Yarns Georgia, and I'm going to say that I think that that's a lower price point for yarn. But remember, you can always go to the top of the page and click on yarn ideas, the top of the pattern page, click on yarn ideas and see what yarns people used in this, and then go to their project pages and look to see if it looks like it's stretched out, if they have a picture of it on them. You can also, if you have your Ravelry stash on Ravelry, it will also tell you you have yarn in your stash for this already. So if you've got worsted weight yarn, it should come up. I'm going to show you the bottom here. It is just a little 2x2 rib for about 1 inch at the bottom. This could easily be made into a split side seam. As you go down, you could split and work back and forth. You could have your back be longer than your front if you wanted shirt tails. You could easily make this a short sweater, a crop sweater, a high hip sweater, because you're working from the top down. So if you have never done a top down set in sleeve, and you know I love the book called Top Down Set in Sleeve Sweaters. That's a great book, but you know, a book comes with a large price point for people, although maybe you could get it out of your local library. I just really think that this is well constructed, and you get the stripe there. Now, could this be knit for a man? Absolutely. Could this be knit for a boy or a girl child? Absolutely. So you've got lots of, if you need, if you want to practice it on a smaller size, a niece or nephew or grandchild, you know, teen, I think that anybody would like it. There's not a lot of finishing that's done on this. This is a rolled stockinette neckline, which is really nice. It rolls there. And then when you pick up for this little button band, it also rolls over. Like I said, I just sewed my buttons on the outside because lazy, right? I didn't want to have to deal with, I was never going to let that hang open. So anyway. Driftwood. Mine is, it looks like that shirt that Where's Waldo's wearing. But I really like it. So I'll show you these again one more time. There's the striped ones. Here's someone who just did her own thing, short sleeved and put a shirt underneath it. And then here is the plain one, where the top button on that one is unbuttoned. See that? That's cute too, right? You could wear a little colored t-shirt underneath it and leave that top button unbuttoned. So that'd be kind of fun. Okay, we're about going to finish up here. I am going to be in Racine, Wisconsin, teaching in the fall. I got my contract signed. So if you are in the Midwest, Upper Midwest, or if you are from Racine, Wisconsin, Monday, October 7th, I am teaching my 3-hour sweater workshop and my 3-hour shawl workshop. That's a whole lot of Cori. But I know a lot of you are like, are you ever going to come to my area? So I want to be upfront about when I'm coming to places. I'm still waiting to get a couple of contracts back for the fall. But if you were looking for sweaters or shawls and you live in Wisconsin or Minnesota or Iowa, I guess, it's called Sew and Save is the local yarn store. So they do sewing classes and knitting, and they have a classroom space that I'll be teaching in. And I told them that they could have as many people as they could fit. So I don't know what their number limit is. I think we're going to do a little knit night, which is going to be fun for me because I love to talk to knitters. So there you go. Now I printed this out because I went to a yarn store and I saw this yarn. Claudia Hand Painted Yarns. Boucle. Remember when we talked about the boucle kimono? Yeah. That pattern that everyone really, everybody tries on. This is a giant skein. I think I was in Iowa. I think I was in Des Moines, maybe, when I saw it. And I didn't know that Claudia Hand Paint had a boucle, and they do. So if you are looking for yarn for that, I think you should just really Google B-O-U-C-L-E, boucle. That's the nubby little, I could not, when I Googled it, I could not find that Claudia Hand Paint still had it, like it was still available in their, website, but yarn stores have it, right? You can go to Ravelry, go to the yarn page, and then it will say shops that carry this over on the right hand side, and you can just call them up and say, are you still carrying that yarn? Because I'm looking for yarn for that sweater Cori talked about. Okay, so let's talk quickly about audiobooks. We've got a thread in the Ravelry group about audiobooks, and I have read a couple in the last 2 weeks. So listened to a couple in the last 2 weeks. The first one I listened to was Kate Morton's Lake House, and it was excellent. It's about 21 hours. And of course I had to drive to Madison and back, and I spend quite a bit of time on the road, going about my daily life. So it was really good. It was one of those that is set in 2 time periods, so the present and the past. I don't always love those in an audiobook. If the transition's not done well, I don't always pick up the cue that we've moved to a different time like you would in a book, right? But this one was really quite well done. Kind of a mystery has happened in the past, and a young woman who's on the police force in the UK is an investigator. She is kind of put on leave, and so she goes to stay with her grandpa, and then she's going to kind of solve this mystery from the past. I found it really interesting. I felt like 20 hours of it were super engaging, and then the ending, I got it figured out. I don't always like to know the ending. It kind of depends on, if you're the type of person who really likes to figure it out and likes knowing that you figured it out, then you'll love this. I kind of want the ending to be a huge surprise, right? Like, what? So that I wouldn't give it a bad review because of that. It's kind of what you're prepared for. But I was like, I know what's going to happen. I know how this ends. Right at the end, not while it was happening. And then now I'm listening, and I'm almost done with The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. This has been on my list forever, but Audible just had their buy 2 get 1 free sale, and it came up in there. So I thought, well, I'll just listen to it, and it's gone really quick. It's a little dark. There's some dark parts. It is, again, a situation where somebody's telling their life story from the past, which I enjoy. So I'll tell you next time whether or not I give a huge thumbs up, but right now I want to get back to listening to it every time. I was listening while I was getting ready this morning. So that always, tells me that it's good if it's engaging me in that way. So if you have an audiobook recommendation for any of us, something that you really liked, there are several pages now of audiobook recommendations out on the Ravelry thread. So go over there and put your favorite audiobook in there, or go look for some recommendations. Some people have done some really nice lists for us. So then we can go over to Goodreads and see what kind of rating it got and see how it goes if you want to put that on your list to be read. Okay, so I just want to put a plug in here for Shepherd's Harvest, which is a 2-day, kind of 3-day event at the Washington County Fairgrounds over by Stillwater, Minnesota. So if I live in the far southwest corner of Minneapolis, St. Paul, this is as far northeast kind of as you go and still be kind of considered, in the cities. And it is a sheep and wool festival. So there are 3 large buildings that hold vendors, up and down the aisles. And then there are several large to small barns with animals kind of on the other side. They have sheep shearing. There often is like bunny rabbits and 4-H kids around, and llama, alpaca. So it's always Mother's Day weekend. They tried to move it away from Mother's Day weekend one year, and it didn't go as well. And fishing opener. So my husband will leave and go to fishing opener, and my house will become empty, and then I invite some friends to come and stay, and we do both days of Shepherd's Harvest, Saturday and Sunday. So last year, Amber and Stacy Knits and the Yarn Hoarder, and Java Jenny and Josh Brown, Auricula 82, and Nitroverted and Matt, Multi-Crafty Guy. I just sound like I'm name dropping. It doesn't matter who they are. Whatever. Just some friends. Let's just put it that way. Some friends from my knitting group, Mary Brown, came out, and anyway, I was trying to include everyone, and then it just started sounding funny in my head. So it's a great event. It costs like $5 to get in for your car. for your car, parking is free. And then it's like $5 a person at the door. They do have a brochure that's printed out. There are classes. I have never taken a class, and I've never taught a class, which I should probably look into, but they have like weaving and spinning and more of the fiber arts classes. There, felting, those kinds of things. Pick the nicer day. Pick the day that it's going to be more sunny, because usually one is more sunny than the other. Or we've had warm weather, but we have also had rain and mud and cold, and it's concrete floors in the buildings, and it can get just really, you can get chilled if you go on kind of a rainy day. But some of the local yarn stores are there. Stephen B is always there with a booth on the end. It's just a really fun event and day. Then I want to tell you about something that happened last week. I went to the Veterans Administration Hospital here in Minneapolis, and I taught 9 trauma rehab therapists how to knit. So I think I'd mentioned before on the podcast that I was trying to set up a veterans group here in the Twin Cities, and that Stephen B had chimed in and said he'd be happy to help me with that. Missy from Stephen B had gotten in touch and said, hey, what do you need? We're happy to help. And I was trying to find veterans. That was my goal, was to find some veterans at a center, perhaps, that might be interested in learning how to knit for post-traumatic stress reduction of symptoms, calming of the mind, depression, all those things that a lot of us use our knitting for, to help with anxiety and stress and those kinds of things. And when I got in touch with the VA here in town, eventually I got, how you work your way up a kind of a ladder of people who, I'll give you over to this department. And then I finally got a hold of this woman who said, I would really like you to come in and teach my therapists. And I said, okay. So last Tuesday I went to their staff meeting, and 2 of the gals had a little bit of prior knowledge of knitting. One had done more knitting recently, and so I just taught them the knit stitch. I cast on for everybody. They brought their own yarn and needles. They're going to use it to help with their own stress in their lives and in their jobs, but then they're also going to get some skills to eventually perhaps lead a group or teach some people how to knit. So I had, about an hour to teach them, and then I'm going back this Tuesday to teach them again. So it was not what I expected to be doing with this initiative. But I kind of, I have a faith belief system, and I thought, this is happening to me for a reason. I'm being provided with this opportunity, and so I'm going to just run with it and see where it leads. So I have not still got the veterans volunteer teaching thing set up with a group of veterans, but I've taught some therapists, and there really is nothing like going into a vet's hospital. Is there? Every single older man, mostly older men. Oh, look who came to visit. It's the codes. Here, I'll tip you down a little. There he is. He's almost as tall as the table. He's so big. He's such a big boy. So when you walk in, it's just everyone there has served, and they are always emblazoned, right, with the flag or Navy or Army or something in their shirt or their hat that says who they are and where they're from, their battalion or whatever. And even if they're there just for appointments, they seem to, they're just proud Americans. And it just gives you a really deep sense of commitment and loyalty, and I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little deep here, but that's how it felt to me that day. When I left, I was like, wow, that just having the opportunity to go in to the VA and spend an hour, it was of value to my life. Let's put it that way, okay? So anyway, I just wanted to touch base on that too. So I think that's about all I have for today, except I have one more story to tell. So for Cori stories number 3, I'm glad you guys like when I chat a little bit. I try not to go too far off topic. Keep it on the knitting. But it was Yarn Over this weekend. In Minnesota, the spring is really busy at the local yarn stores. We have the Shop Pop, and then a few weeks later we have Yarn Over, and then a few weeks later we have Shepherd's Harvest, and we all run out of money. So somebody needs to move one of those events to the fall so we can save our money a little bit. But Yarn Over is basically a one-day event that the Minnesota Knitters Guild puts on Saturday at a hotel up north on the north side of Minneapolis, 694 and 169, if you're kind of familiar. It's held at the Marriott. And they have a huge vendor market, which is free, two small ballrooms, but that's a large vendor market. And then they have teachers. They bring teachers in from all over the United States. And we have a dinner on Friday night that is optional, and they have a speaker. And then on Saturday morning, you have classes from 9 to noon, and then there's 2 hours free, and then you have class from 2 to 5 if you sign up for classes, but you can just come to the vendor market. So this year, I went to the dinner with some friends from my knitting group and sat next to a couple of people. And so I'd like to say hi to both of those gals. I won't call them out just in case they don't want me to say their names. But Laura Neal sat at our table, and Cecilia were two instructors that sat at our table. They were teaching for the weekend, and so when you go to they call it the teacher's dinner, one of the teachers will sit at your table, but we had two. Well, that was really nice. And the meal is always really good. Of course, you're at a big hotel, and so it's kind of expensive to buy a ticket for the dinner. They have a shawl contest. Everybody who comes who wears a shawl has their picture taken on the way in. So you just turn around, you hold your shawl open, they take your picture, and then somebody downloads that all onto a computer quickly and then flips through during the dinner. There are shawls up on the screen the entire time. And then you can vote for your favorite. And so people win prizes, and they do a drawing, and then they also do like the best. This year they did best color work and best texture lace. And so it's really fun to sit and look at the shawls go up, and you don't have to knit a fabulous, amazing, all over colorwork shawl to participate. It's just fun to see all the different colorways. And so they do that. And then we have a speaker. And this year the speaker was Zandy Peters. She is the designer behind the fox paws. If you have never seen that, it's a very interesting stitch pattern called stacked stitches that she kind of invented. They used to always say there's nothing new in knitting, but Zandy invented something new in knitting. And so it looks like the paws of a fox that you knit around, and then it's horizontal kind of striping on I should have. So Zandy talked about her kind of path to her career and what made her develop some of the stacked stitches that she kind of invented. It was really fascinating. She has, I think, an amazing brain. You know those people who just can see things in a different way, and it was fascinating. She was came out of a college program in design, industrial design, and she did shoes for a while, and she talked about the fabrics behind that then stacked on the next thing that taught her the next thing, and she was kind of doing the hustle, trying to make a living, and but just fascinating. She really wants to go to graduate school in kind of textile and design, and she talked about trying to come up with the money for that. And by the end of the talk, which was maybe a half an hour to 45 minutes, she had slides and stuff. I posted on Instagram, does anyone else think she's already done the doctorate in knitting? Because she does not need to go to graduate school to learn more about it. She's already done the work. I'm sure she wants to learn. She seems like that type of person. That's a story. And coming from a young person in the industry who is trying to make a living, and it's hard to make a living as a designer or
in the fashion industry. And so I would highly recommend if you get a chance. She does quite a bit of speaking around the country, and she teaches classes. So that would be fascinating. I did not take her class on Saturday. It was an all-day class. But one of the gals at my table was going to take it, and I wish I would have run into her afterwards on Saturday to find out how fascinating her mind was in a class. I took 2 classes. I took Breaking Bad by Candace Eisner Strick on Saturday morning. It was kind of a tips and tricks class, but I was really happy to take it because this is the last time that Candace is going to be teaching. She retired in the fall, but she'd already had this particular event on her schedule. And so she knew that she was teaching it, and I went to her skirt class at the Guild in the fall. And so I knew that this was going to be the last time she was teaching. She's been doing this on the road teaching for 20 years. And I don't know how you keep that schedule and that pace up, but I really enjoyed her class. I usually take classes as often as I can because of the teacher and not the subject. Like, I just want to know the person and I want to see their teaching style. That's what I'm most fascinated by, is learning how to teach by watching teachers. I was trained as a teacher, right? So I like to see how they interact in the room, and how when someone asks a question over here, how they deal with that and how they approach that. I really enjoy the watching of that. She was a very slow, methodical teacher. She waited for everyone to be done, for the class to catch up. And that's really good for me to see, because I'm like high energy, got to keep everybody entertained because, I taught at-risk kids. So I'm always moving on to the next thing. And so sometimes I can kind of barrel right through someone and unintentionally. So it's good for me to sit in a class where I had to kind of patiently wait and watch her kind of monitor to make sure that everyone was on the same page. It was a really good class. She went over probably 8 different techniques. We learned a couple of cast-ons. We learned how to ladder up a stripe. We did just some interesting techniques that you might not already know, how to start a pinhole center on 4 double pointed needles and 8 stitches. You know how hard that is. But she had a little trick for each one to make it better or different. We came away with a really great handout. So that was a good class. And then at noon, I went down. They do box lunches. And I met some friends for lunch, and then we shopped together, and I ran into a couple of my library knitters, hi Chris and Mary, who were shopping at the market. And then in the afternoon, I took a class from Lavanya Patricella. I took her brioche class. I know how to do brioche. I did brioche kind of back in the day. I feel like brioche came back with Stephen West, kind of like mohair came back, and was something that, if you've been in the, industry, or if you've been knitting long enough, that was popular back in the day. So I just wanted to see how she taught it, because I would love to prepare it as a class to teach, but I just wanted to see kind of how she taught it. And boy, was I surprised at the way she taught the class. She never really prepared the class as a whole. She came around to each person individually and did the setup row with them, and went around the room one at a time, and then came back and then did the second part all the way around the room, and then she went back, third part, and then she just helped. So never once was there an explanation to the whole class about what brioche is or how it works. It was just a hands-on. She had a sample in her hand, and she showed you, and then you did it. And because I already knew how to do it, it didn't take, she didn't have to spend too much time at my table with me. I could just, and so I asked a couple of questions about fixing some mistakes. She did her advanced class in the morning, and because I wanted to really take Candace's class in the morning, I probably should have been in the advanced brioche 2-color class in the morning, where you would have learned more of that. This was just beginning kind of brioche, and you were casting on for hat and then doing it in the round, 2-color brioche in the round. But it was an interesting way. If I would have been I think there were 15 or 18 people in the class. If I would have been number 18, those first 10 to 20 minutes for me would have been really, I think I would have been irritated that I couldn't get started because I was waiting for her to come show me how to start. I mean, we had a pattern in front of us, so I guess you could have just tried it, but I was at the front, so I didn't have to wait to get started. It was just an interesting way to do a large class. I think people probably really liked that one-on-one attention the entire time, because that's all she did was move around the room and help people and fix mistakes. And she would talk to the class as a whole. When someone would ask a question, she would be showing them and she would say it out loud. It wasn't like it was secretive. It was just a really novel way to approach teaching, almost as if everyone was just there one-on-one. So yeah. That's why I take classes from teachers, to see how they teach and to see how they interact with people. She was a very giving instructor. If someone had the same question over and over again, I never saw her, do anything like that. I never. She was very giving of her time and positive. In interacting with everyone, so it was definitely a good experience. I was just surprised by it. I've never seen someone do it that way, be it right or wrong. So, and I don't know if that's the way she teaches it in her home local yarn store, or if she does more individual lessons or like 2 or 3 people. Then I could see that that's how she kind of has practiced, and so that's the way in which she would approach it. But I taught in a major, large suburban high school. We always had a bunch of kids in the class. I would have anywhere from 12 to 21 at-risk kids in the classroom. So, I would never spend a lot of time with one person because they would be burning down the building in the back of the room. I should say that they weren't all. They did not all have kind of acting out behaviors. There were all kinds of things that would go on, so I should take that back a little bit. Okay, so you can find me in all the places. Irocknits on Instagram and Ravelry. Irocknits is my website, which I'm working on updating my website. I had a understanding with a young lady that she was going to do my website over a year ago, and it hasn't happened yet. So I feel like she owes me that, and I can't decide if I should just pay someone now and put the money into it because it's not getting done or not. But I have great show notes. Remember, you can go out and look for the show notes on all the links about everything I talked to about on the podcast, and they will be on my website. They will be underneath the down bar on YouTube. If you're looking at this on an iPad or your phone, you can look at the down bar and see all the show notes, and it will also be on my website or Ravelry. So I have it in all the places, so it should be easy for you to find. Please feel free to reach out and ask me questions. I have a question, Ask Cori a Question thread on Ravelry. So if you have a question for me that you'd like me to talk about on the podcast, please go over and do it there. So then I can answer it for you in real time, and then maybe talk about it in the future on the podcast. But I don't have to. If you'd prefer that I just do it in private, that's fine as well. What else? Put your projects up on the knit along. If you're watching this in the first couple of days and you've knit something that's an Irocknits Designs, you can win it. That's all I have for this week, and I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your schedule to sit with me, to knit with me, to laugh with me, to talk about life in the knitting world together. I really have appreciated all the friendships that I feel like I'm kind of garnering from this. I feel like I have this big group of people who I could be. Kind of nice. So until next time, keep it colorful.